Everyone thought the engine war was over. Tesla was betting everything on batteries. BYD was racing to shorten charging times. Governments across the world were announcing deadlines for petrol cars like the ending had already been written. And for a while, it actually felt true. The future looked electric, clean, silent, inevitable. But then, in the middle of all that momentum, a single number came out of China. And suddenly, some of the biggest car companies in the world went quiet. For 1%. At first, it sounded meaningless. Just another technical statistic buried inside an industry announcement. But inside engineering circles, that number spread fast. Because it represented something most companies had spent decades chasing and still couldn't fully reach. Thermal efficiency, the hidden scorecard of every engine ever built. And according to Geely, their new hybrid engine had just crossed a line many experts thought was almost impossible. What made the announcement uncomfortable wasn't just the number itself. It was what came after it. Reports started claiming that future hybrid vehicles using this system could travel more than 2,000 kilometers on a single tank. Suddenly, the conversation changed. People stopped asking, how fast can EVs charge? And started asking something else entirely. What if the world gave up on hybrids too early? Because here's the strange part. While everyone was distracted by the electric revolution, China may have been building something else in the background. Something quieter, something far more strategic. And by the time the industry noticed, it might already be too late to catch up. For decades, petrol engines had one giant weakness: waste. Every time fuel burned inside an engine, most of its energy disappeared as heat. Older engines were painfully inefficient. Sometimes, only 20% of the fuel's energy actually moved the car forward. The rest vanished into noise, vibration, and temperature. That inefficiency shaped the entire modern auto industry. It's why cars consumed so much fuel for so many years, and it's why Toyota became legendary. When the Prius arrived, it changed how the world viewed hybrids forever. Toyota figured out something others couldn't: if an electric motor quietly supported the engine at the right moments. Fuel consumption dropped dramatically. Eventually, Toyota pushed thermal efficiency close to 40%. Engineers called it extraordinary. Honda followed with its own breakthroughs. For years, Japan owned this territory completely. Efficient engines were their kingdom, and then Geely arrived claiming 48.41%. Now, to most people, that sounds like a small jump. 8% doesn't feel revolutionary. But in engineering, the closer you get to perfection, the harder every tiny improvement becomes. Moving from 20% to 30% is difficult. Moving from 40% to nearly 50%. That's where experts start paying attention very carefully. Because if Geely's numbers hold up in the real world, it changes more than fuel economy. It changes assumptions. And this is where the story starts getting uncomfortable. See, the world spent the last few years treating hybrids like a temporary bridge, a stepping stone between petrol and fully electric vehicles. Even many automakers behaved that way. The real investment, the real excitement, the real political support, all of it shifted toward EVs. But Geely's announcement introduced a dangerous possibility. What if hybrids aren't a transition technology at all? What if they evolve into something strong enough to compete directly with EVs? That question suddenly matters once you understand how this engine actually works. Geely didn't just improve one thing, they attacked every weakness at the same time. Higher compression ratios squeezed more power from every drop of fuel. Precision fuel injection reduced waste almost down to microscopic levels. New low-friction materials prevented energy from disappearing inside the engine itself. The most important piece wasn't mechanical, it was software. The engine now uses AI-based management. Systems that constantly adjust performance in real time, traffic, speed, battery charge, road conditions, driver behavior. The system studies everything continuously and shifts the engine toward its most efficient operating state almost instantly. Older engines were rigid. This one adapts, and adaptation changes everything, because hybrid systems already have one hidden advantage most people rarely think about. The petrol engine doesn't carry the full burden alone. In city traffic, lower speeds, or stop-and-go conditions, the electric motor quietly takes over part of the work. During braking, energy that would normally disappear gets recycled back into the battery. means the engine spends far more time operating inside its ideal efficiency zone. Suddenly, the impossible starts sounding realistic. Imagine driving from one major city to another, and then another, and another, without searching for a charging station or stopping every few hundred kilometers. Imagine fuel costs dropping low enough that traditional petrol cars begin to feel outdated almost overnight. Now the industry has a problem because EVs still have weaknesses. Charging infrastructure remains uneven. Battery production is expensive. Long-distance travel still creates anxiety for many drivers. In major cities, EVs work beautifully. But outside those environments, the reality becomes more complicated, and Ely seems to understand that. But the deeper story here isn't really about one engine. It's about where the engine came from. A few years ago, many people still viewed China as the world's factory floor. Fast manufacturing, cheap labor, copycat products. That reputation stayed around for decades. Even when Chinese companies grew larger, many Western and Japanese firms still believed true innovation belonged elsewhere. That assumption is starting to collapse. Because China didn't just build cars, it built ecosystems, batteries, chips, electric motors, AI systems, supply chains, manufacturing infrastructure, software integration. While many countries depended on separate suppliers spread across the world, Chinese companies began pulling everything closer together inside one system, and that changes speed. Developing batteries next door to software. Engineers and semiconductor suppliers can move much faster than competitors scattered across multiple countries. New technology goes from testing to production quicker. Costs fall. Delays shrink. That's the hidden advantage people underestimated, and now the consequences are becoming visible. Toyota and Honda may never publicly admit concern. That's not how companies like that operate. But internally, this changes the atmosphere completely. Because the danger isn't just losing sales. The real danger is losing technological authority. For decades, Japanese engineering represented reliability and efficiency. Toyota hybrids became benchmarks the rest of the world chased. But once consumers begin associating innovation with someone else, momentum shifts quietly at first, and then all at once. And China isn't only competing in hybrids. That's what makes this more serious. Tesla still dominates headlines around fully electric vehicles. BYD is aggressively expanding battery technology. Chinese automakers are scaling production at speeds many rivals struggle to match. Now they're advancing rapidly in hybrid systems. 2, which means competitors suddenly face pressure from multiple directions at the same time. Some companies may adapt. Others may hesitate. But the biggest problem is strategic confusion, because billions of dollars have already been committed to the EV transition. Factories redesigned, supply chains rebuilt, entire futures planned around one assumption that electric vehicles would completely replace everything before them. Now that future looks less certain, because EVs are failing, but because hybrids may be evolving faster than expected. And that creates a strange new reality for the entire auto industry, one where fully electric cars continue growing, while ultra-efficient hybrids grow alongside them, one where customers stop choosing based on ideology and start choosing based on practicality, the cheapest option, the longest range, the least inconvenience. And if that becomes the real battle, then the winner may not be the company with the boldest vision. It may be the company that understood human behavior better than everyone else. Because most drivers don't care about technological purity. They care about reliability, convenience, cost, freedom from stress. That's why this story matters far beyond one engine announcement. The uncomfortable possibility now hanging over the industry is this. What if the future of transportation was never supposed to be fully electric? What if the companies trying to erase the petrol engine accidentally created the perfect conditions for its evolution instead? And if China really becomes the country leading that transformation, then the biggest disruption in the car industry may still be ahead of us.